The stars in the sky seemed to stretch forever, a vast expanse of blackness dotted with countless points of light. Captain Evan Carrington stood on the edge of the rocky cliff, his eyes scanning the horizon. The planet he was on was unlike anything he had ever seen. The air smelled fresh, but there was an odd sense of loneliness in the silence. The crew of the Pioneer had landed on this uncharted world, hoping to gather valuable information about its strange ecosystem. But what they had found so far was a mystery. Evan adjusted his jacket and turned back to his crew. "Keep scanning the area. We're here to learn, not to take chances," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. His crew respected him. He was known for his level-headed decision-making, especially in unfamiliar situations. Suddenly, a low noise echoed through the rocky landscape, a soft hum, almost like a whisper. The hair on the back of Evan's neck stood up. He motioned for his crew to stay alert. They all moved cautiously towards the source of the sound, a deep ravine where the shadows seemed darker than usual. Then, as they approached the edge of the ravine, they saw her. She was lying on the ground, her skin a soft shade of blue, almost glowing in the pale light. Long, silver hair framed her face, and delicate features marked her as something completely alien, yet strangely beautiful. Her clothes were tattered, as though she had been in a struggle, and she appeared to be unconscious. "Is she?" one of Evan's crew members whispered, but Evan held up a hand to stop him. "Stay back," he instructed, his voice low. His instincts told him this was not something they should approach carelessly. But another part of him couldn't ignore the sense that she needed help. Evan knelt beside her cautiously. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and her skin was cool to the touch, but not dangerously so. He couldn't tell whether she was injured or simply exhausted. "Is she alive?" asked Mara, the ship's medic, who had joined him. "Yes," Evan said, his gaze fixed on her face. There was something unsettling about her appearance. Not just her beauty, but something deeper, something wrong. He felt an unusual pull toward her, an urge to protect her, even though he didn't understand why. "We should take her back to the ship," Mara suggested. "We can figure out what's going on once we're there." Evan nodded. "Get her up carefully." Together, they lifted the alien woman and carried her back toward the ship. As they moved through the rocky terrain, Evan couldn't shake the strange feeling growing in the pit of his stomach. Something was off about this planet, and he had a sinking feeling that this woman was the key to understanding it. When they reached the ship, the crew wasted no time setting her up in the medical bay. Mara quickly started scanning her for signs of injury. The woman remained unconscious, her face peaceful but slightly pale. As the scans ran, the computer displayed strange readings. "This doesn't make sense," Mara muttered. "Her biology isn't like anything I've seen. It's almost like she's part human." "Part human?" Evan asked, his curiosity piqued. "Look at these readings," Mara said, tapping the screen. "It's not just her DNA. She's got something else inside her, some kind of energy that doesn't belong here. I can't explain it." Evan frowned. He knew the galaxy was full of unknowns, but this was something different. The woman was clearly not human, but why was her body reacting in ways that suggested otherwise? A soft, almost imperceptible sound drew his attention back to the woman's face. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing glowing irises of gold and blue. She blinked several times, as if trying to focus, before her gaze settled on Evan. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, but strangely soothing. "You are warm." Evan felt a strange sensation wash over him, an overwhelming urge to comfort her. "I'm Captain Evan Carrington. You're safe now. Can you tell us who you are?" The woman's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment it felt like she was staring into his very soul. "Sarah," she whispered. "I am Sarah." Evan felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. There was something about her presence, something that made him feel both calm and alert at the same time. He didn't understand it, but he knew he couldn't leave her alone. Zara blinked again, then spoke in a voice that was much stronger this time. I need your warmth. Even looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Her gaze seemed to soften. I cannot sleep without your warmth, she said, her voice almost pleading. Evan's heart skipped a beat. Something told him that Zara's story was just beginning, and it would change everything. The days following Zara's arrival on the Pioneer were filled with confusion and unanswered questions. Captain Evan Carrington had never encountered anything like this before. Zara's strange condition, her need for warmth, only grew stronger, and the crew found themselves perplexed by her behavior. She was no longer unconscious, but she still seemed weak, almost fragile. Her glowing blue skin, though beautiful, gave off an eerie, otherworldly glow, especially in the dim lights of the ship's medical bay. Evan found himself drawn to her more than he cared to admit. He had always been a rational man, focused on logic and reason. But there was something about Zara, something in her eyes, that unsettled him. She seemed to look at him as if she knew things he didn't, as if she was holding a secret just out of reach. How are you feeling? Evan asked one evening as he stood by her bed. He noticed that her eyes were closed, but she was lying still, breathing evenly. I feel better, Zara replied softly, her voice still weak. But I need your warmth. Evan hesitated, unsure of how to respond. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he couldn't deny the strange pull he felt when she was near. He had been reluctant at first, but now he found himself giving in to the feeling. Something about Zara's presence seemed to soothe him, like a comfort he didn't know he needed. Mara, the ship's medic, entered the room with a tablet in her hand, her brow furrowed in concern. Captain, we need to talk. Evan nodded and stepped aside, letting Mara approach Zara's bedside. What is it? Mara glanced at Zara, then lowered her voice. There's something very strange about her physiology. The scans we've done show that she's not just from a different planet. Her biology is completely different, but that's not the worst part. Evan frowned. What do you mean? Mara looked uncomfortable. I've been researching the data from the scans, and I found something disturbing. Zara isn't just an alien. She's part of a species called the Zorilians. They were once a dominant force in this galaxy, but something happened to them. They began to lose their ability to sleep, or rather, they lost the ability to rest in the way we do. Evan's interest was piqued. What do you mean they lost the ability to sleep? Mara sighed. The Zorilians were once a powerful species, capable of feats beyond our understanding. But over time, they lost the biological need for sleep. Instead, they started to rely on the warmth of another being to survive. If they didn't get that warmth, they would grow weaker and eventually die. Zara, she's one of the last of her kind. The rest of her people have either perished or gone into deep hibernation, waiting for someone to revive their species. Evan's mind raced as he processed the information. You're saying that Zara needs my warmth to stay alive? Yes, Mara confirmed. Not just to survive, but to sleep. Without it, she's not going to get any better. Evan glanced at Zara, who had fallen into a light sleep. He didn't know how to feel about this revelation. Was he supposed to just accept that an alien species needed his warmth to live? And what about the rest of the Zorilians? What would happen if they couldn't find a way to help them? What happens if she doesn't get what she needs? Evan asked. Mara's face grew solemn. She'll continue to weaken, and if nothing changes, she'll die. The same thing will happen to the rest of her people. They're all dependent on this warmth, and without it, they will fade away. Evan stared at Zara, feeling a strange sense of responsibility that he couldn't explain. She wasn't just another alien. She was the key to saving an entire species, and whether he liked it or not, he was connected to her now. I can't just let her die, Evan said, determination in his voice. Mara nodded. We'll need to figure out a solution. But first, we need to understand more about the Zorilians. We need to know what happened to them, and whether there's any way to reverse the damage. Even agreed. We'll need to find out everything we can about their history, if there's any hope of saving her. And the rest of her people, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Later that night, as Evan sat in his quarters, he couldn't stop thinking about Xara. Her voice, her touch, the way she looked at him as though he was the only person who could help her. It all seemed so overwhelming. But there was one thing he knew for sure. Whatever happened, he couldn't turn his back on her. He had to find a way to help her, and perhaps, in doing so, help save a species that was on the brink of extinction. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Even Carrington was about to embark on a mission that would change the course of his life and the fate of an entire alien race forever. Captain Even Carrington stood at the bridge of the Pioneer, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. His mind was racing with everything that had happened since they'd found Xara. The Zoralians, a species on the brink of extinction, and the strange bond that seemed to form between him and Xara. It was all so overwhelming. He didn't know what was more troubling. The fact that Xara depended on his warmth to survive, or the fact that the entire Zoralian race seemed to be in danger of dying out unless something changed. Even, you're lost in thought again, Mara said, stepping beside him. You're worried about her, aren't you? Even didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gazed out into space, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on him. I don't know what to do. We have to help her, but I can't shake the feeling that things are getting out of control. The Zoralians are depending on us, but it's too much. Mara looked at him, her face sympathetic. You're not alone in this, you know. We'll figure it out together. Even nodded, but a deep sense of unease lingered. He had always been the one in control, the one making the tough decisions. But this was different. Xara was no longer just an injured alien they found on a distant planet. She was the key to an entire species' survival, and he was deeply tied to her fate. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Xara's condition was improving, but she still required Even's presence to feel rested. They had set up a special room for her where she could be close to him. Even had tried to stay away, giving her some space, but every time he did, he felt a strange emptiness growing inside him. The warmth she needed wasn't just physical, it was as if their connection was becoming something more. One evening, as Evan walked down the ship's hall, he was stopped by Commander Zane, the second in command of the Pioneer. Zane's face was serious, his eyes sharp as he spoke. Even, we need to talk about Xara. I don't trust her, or the Zoralians. We don't know enough about them. What if they're just using us? Even's expression hardened. She's not using us, Zane. She's in danger. And whether you like it or not, we're responsible for her now. Zane's jaw clenched. I get it, Captain. But what happens if the Zoralians come after us? If they're truly as powerful as Mara says, we could be in deep trouble. We need to be prepared. Even shook his head. We'll handle that when it comes. Right now, we focus on helping Xara. Zane stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Just be careful, Even. You're not thinking clearly about this. Even didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, heading toward the room where Xara rested. His mind was torn. On one hand, he felt a deep sense of duty to help her and protect her people. On the other, there was a nagging fear that Zane's warnings might be right. What if they were putting themselves at risk by trusting the Zoralians? When Even entered the room, Xara was lying on a bed, her silver hair spread out around her like a halo. Her eyes opened as he approached, and she smiled faintly. It was the first real smile he had seen from her, and it made his heart ache. Captain Carrington, she said softly, her voice full of warmth. You're here. Even sat beside her, feeling an overwhelming urge to stay close. He couldn't explain why, but being near her felt like the right thing to do. How are you feeling? He asked. Xara hesitated before answering. Better, but not fully. I still need your warmth. Even nodded, trying to hide the unease creeping into his thoughts. I'm here. I'll stay as long as you need me. Sarah reached out slowly, her fingers brushing his hand. The touch sent a shiver through him. She looked into his eyes, and for a moment, there was nothing else in the world. Just the two of them, connected in a way Even couldn't fully understand. You don't know how much this means to me, Sarah said quietly. Your warmth is more than I can explain. It gives me life, and it gives hope to my people. Even swallowed hard. I don't know if I can save all of you, but I'll do everything I can. Sarah's eyes glistened. You already have, Captain. Your presence is the key. At that moment, the door to the room slid open, and Mara entered with a serious look on her face. Even, we need you on the bridge. There's something you need to see. Reluctantly, Even stood up and left Sarah's side. He glanced back at her once more before heading toward the bridge, where he would face more troubling news. When he arrived, Mara was waiting by the communication console. She didn't need to say anything. The look on her face said it all. We've received a transmission, Mara said, her voice low. From the Zorilians. Even's stomach tightened. The Zorilians had made contact. It was time to find out what they truly wanted, and whether they could be trusted. Captain Even Carrington stood in the ship's bridge, his eyes fixed on the communication console where the latest transmission had just been received. The message had come through as a direct link from the Zorilian fleet, whatever that meant. He could feel the tension in the air as the crew waited for him to respond. Mara stood beside him, her arms crossed. We don't know what to expect, Even. They could be planning something we're not ready for. Even nodded but didn't speak. His mind was racing. The Zorilians had reached out after days of silence, and now he had to decide whether to trust them. Zara had spoken of hope, of survival, but what if they were only using him for their own gain? He turned to face the crew. Prepare for communication, he said firmly. We'll answer it together. The bridge fell silent, everyone waiting for the connection to be made. Finally, the screen flickered, and a figure appeared before them. The alien was tall, with a regal presence. Its blue skin and glowing eyes immediately marked it as a Zorilian. The being's voice echoed through the bridge, calm but filled with authority. Captain Carrington. The Zorilian said, I am Velker, leader of the Zorilian survivors. We have been watching you and your crew. We are grateful that one of our own has found safety among your kind. Even's pulse quickened. This was the moment. Velkor, he replied, his voice steady despite the anxiety running through him. We've taken in Sarah, and we're doing what we can to help her. But we need answers. What is it you want from us? Velker's expression shifted slightly, and the glow of his eyes seemed to intensify. Sarah is more than just a survivor. She is a vessel for the future of our race. You are now involved in our survival, Captain. We are offering you a choice. Help us, or face the consequences of denying our request. The words hung in the air, and Even felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at Mara, whose face had paled. This wasn't just a plea for help. It was a demand. What kind of consequences? Even asked, his voice colder now. We will do whatever it takes to ensure our survival, Velkor replied. If you refuse us, we will take what we need by force. Your ship, your technology, your warmth, it all belongs to us now. Even's heart raced. This wasn't what he had expected. He had hoped for an alliance, an understanding. But instead, the Zorilians were issuing an ultimatum. We can't just give you what you want, Even said firmly, trying to stay calm. If you want our help, you'll have to earn it. We're not slaves to your demands. Velker's eyes flashed with what seemed like irritation. We do not have time for negotiation, Captain. Our species is dying, and you are the only hope left. You will comply with our terms, or you will regret it. The transmission abruptly cut off, leaving the crew in stunned silence. Even clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the Zorilian threat pressing down on him. Damn it, he muttered, turning toward Mara. They've made it clear they won't wait for us to figure things out. We need to find a way to help Sara without falling into their trap." Mara nodded. "But how do we help her without giving them everything they want? If we don't, the Zorilians might attack us. They have the power to do it." Even stood still for a moment, deep in thought. His first responsibility was to his crew, and he knew he couldn't allow them to be endangered. But Sara, she was innocent in all of this. She didn't ask for any of this, yet she was caught in the middle of a conflict she couldn't control. "First, we need to figure out exactly what Sara is capable of," Even said, his voice resolute. "I'll go talk to her, find out if she knows anything more about the Zorilians and their true intentions." Mara looked at him with concern. "Be careful, Even. Sara might not have all the answers. But right now, we're in a race against time. The Zorilians won't wait." Even nodded, then turned and walked toward the medical bay where Sara was resting. As he entered the room, he found her sitting on the bed, her silver hair falling over her shoulders like a soft curtain. Her glowing eyes looked up at him, and a faint smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "You've spoken to them," Jara said softly. "I felt the change in the air." Even didn't sit down right away. Instead, he paced back and forth, trying to figure out how to approach her. "Sara," he began, "I need to know the truth. What do the Zorilians want from us? Is it just the warmth, or is there something more?" Sara's eyes clouded with sorrow, and she lowered her head. "They want everything," she whispered. "They have nothing left but the hope of survival. If they are not stopped, they will consume everything they can, until there is nothing left of your people." Even's heart sank. The Zorilians weren't just desperate, they were dangerous. And now, he was caught between helping Sara and risking the safety of his own crew. Captain Even Carrington sat alone in his quarters, the weight of the Zorilian transmission pressing heavily on his mind. He had always been a man who trusted his instincts, but this was different. The Zorilians had given him an ultimatum: help them or face their wrath. But what did help truly mean? Was it just Sara's warmth they sought, or did they want more? He rubbed his face, trying to clear his thoughts. His mind kept drifting back to Sara, the innocent alien who had somehow become the key to an entire species' survival. And yet, she was caught in a web of deception, where both sides were trying to use her for their own gain. The door to his quarters chimed, breaking his thoughts. He stood up and opened it to find Mara standing there, her expression grave. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside. Even closed the door behind her. "About what happened earlier." Mara nodded, her face tight with concern. "The crew is scared, Even. You know as well as I do that the Zorilians aren't just asking for help. They're threatening us. If we refuse, they'll attack." Even sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know. I've been thinking about it all day. The Zorilians, they're desperate, but I don't think we can trust them." Mara's brow furrowed. "So what are we supposed to do? We can't just sit here and hope they go away, and we can't ignore their demand for help." Even paused for a moment, staring out of the window at the cold, endless expanse of space. He knew Mara was right. The situation was becoming more dangerous by the minute. But there had to be another way. There had to be something they could do that wouldn't lead to war. "I'm going to speak with Sara," Even said at last. "She's the key to understanding all of this. If anyone knows how to stop the Zorilians, it's her." Mara hesitated. "Be careful, Even. I've seen the way you've been acting around her. This isn't just about saving the species anymore, is it?" Even's heart tightened, but he didn't want to admit it. He had been feeling something for Sara, something he couldn't explain. But this wasn't about him. This was about the future of two species. He had to stay focused on the bigger picture. "I'll be fine, Mara," he said, his voice firm. "We'll figure this out. We have to." Mara gave him a concerned look but didn't press further. "I'll be on the bridge if you need me," she said quietly before turning and leaving. Even stood there for a moment, lost in thought, before heading toward the medical bay. As he walked through the corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The Zorelians wouldn't wait forever, and neither would Sara. She needed him, and he had promised to help her. When he entered the medical bay, Sara was sitting on the edge of the bed, her head lowered as though she were deep in thought. Her silvery hair shimmered in the soft light of the room, and her glowing blue eyes flickered when she looked up at him. "Captain Carrington," she said softly, "you came." Evan's heart beat faster as he walked toward her. He had to stay strong. "I had to see you, Sara. We need to talk." Sara's expression darkened, and she nodded slowly. "You're worried about the Zorelians, aren't you?" Ivan hesitated. "I don't trust them. They've made their demands, and I don't think they'll stop until they get what they want. But I'm not sure what they'll do if we refuse." Sara's eyes clouded with sadness. "I never wanted this. My people. We're so few now. The Zorelians have become desperate. They will do anything to survive." Ivan sat down next to her, trying to find the right words. "What do they need from us? You told me your warmth was the key, but is that all they want?" Sara looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "No, they want more. They want to use your warmth to revive their race, but they also want your resources, your ships, your technology. They will take whatever they can if it means survival." Ivan's stomach churned. This was worse than he thought. The Zorelians weren't just after survival. They were willing to destroy others to achieve it. "What are we supposed to do, Sara? How do we stop them?" he asked, his voice full of frustration. Sara looked at him, her expression pained. "There is a way, but it is dangerous. You will have to choose, Captain Carrington. Help me, help us, and risk everything. Or refuse, and condemn both our species to extinction." Ivan took a deep breath, his mind racing with possibilities. The decision weighed heavily on him. Helping the Zorelians meant saving Sara and perhaps her entire species, but it also meant risking everything for a race that had shown no mercy. Refusing meant war, and there was no guarantee that humanity would survive it. He looked into Sara's eyes, the glowing blue depths seeming to pierce his very soul. In that moment, Ivan realized that the choice wasn't just about survival. It was about what kind of future he wanted to fight for. "I'll do whatever it takes," Ivan said, his voice steady. "But we'll do it on our terms, not theirs." Sara smiled, a faint, hopeful expression. Then there is still hope. The hours after Ivan's decision felt like days. He had promised Sara that he would act, that he would help her people on their terms, but not without a plan. He couldn't just hand the Zorelians everything they wanted. No, there had to be another way, something that would allow both sides to survive without falling into chaos. Ivan paced the small meeting room on the Pioneer, running through his thoughts. The crew had gathered for a strategy session, but the atmosphere was heavy. They could feel the tension growing, an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty. The Zorelians were watching, waiting for them to make a move. "Captain," Mara's voice broke through his thoughts as she entered the room. "The crew is ready. We've got everything we need to begin our mission, but are you sure about this?" Ivan turned to face her. "I'm not sure of anything anymore, Mara. But we don't have a choice. We either risk everything and try to stop the Zorelians from taking over, or we give in and let them destroy everything we've worked for." Mara stepped closer, her expression sympathetic but serious. "I get it, but this is dangerous. If we fail, we'll be fighting a war on two fronts." Ivan nodded grimly. "I know, but we'll have a better chance if we're smart about this. We need to find a way to disrupt their plans without triggering an all-out war." Just then, Commander Zane entered the room, his face lined with frustration. "Captain, we've got a problem," he said, his voice tight. "The Zorelians have locked onto our location. They're waiting for us to make the first move. We've got maybe a few hours before they send reinforcements." Ivan felt his chest tighten. "How sure are you that they'll attack?" Zane's jaw set hard. "They will. They've already made it clear. If we don't comply, they'll take us by force. The room fell silent. The weight of Zane's words hung in the air. Even closed his eyes, his mind racing. This was it, the moment he had been dreading. But he knew what he had to do. Prepare for everything, Even said, his voice calm but firm. We need to move fast. Mara, get the crew into position. Zane, I want you to start preparing the defensive systems. We're not going down without a fight. Zane gave a sharp nod and left the room without another word. Mara, however, lingered for a moment. You sure about this, Even? She asked quietly. It's not just about saving Sarah anymore, is it? You've got to think about the whole crew. Even turned to her, his eyes filled with determination. This isn't just about me, Mara. It's about doing what's right. If we let the Zorilians take everything we've built, then what are we even fighting for? We have to show them that humanity isn't going to bend to threats. Mara gave a soft sigh. I just hope we're not making a mistake. Before Even could respond, his communicator beeped. He quickly answered it, and a familiar voice came through. Captain, it's Sarah, she said, her voice slightly strained. I need to speak with you. It's important. Even's heart skipped a beat. I'll be there in a moment, he replied. His mind instantly focused on Sarah's well-being. When he arrived in the medical bay, Sarah was standing near the window, her figure bathed in soft light. Her eyes were distant, but when she turned to face him, there was a seriousness in her gaze that Even had never seen before. Captain, Sarah said quietly, I know what you're planning, but you must understand, this is not just about your survival. The Zorilians are desperate, and they have no other choice. They will destroy us if they have to. You cannot afford to make them your enemies. Even walked closer, trying to read her expression. You think we should just give them what they want. Let them take everything. Zara shook her head slowly. I do not want you to give up everything. But you must know that the Zorilians are more than they seem. Their power is greater than you realize. If they sense resistance, they will show no mercy. You may think you are fighting for freedom, but in truth, you are fighting for survival. Your survival, my survival, and the survival of your crew. Even swallowed hard. So, you're telling me that we have no choice but to give in to them. Sarah's eyes softened. Not exactly. There is another way, but it requires you to trust me completely. You will need to believe that what I'm asking is the only way to save both our species. Evan felt a sense of dread creeping up his spine. What do you mean? Zara stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. The Zorilians are not just seeking warmth or technology. They seek the power to rebuild their race, and they will stop at nothing to achieve it. But if you help me unlock the true power hidden within me, I can stop them. Together, we can reshape their future. Evan stared at her, confusion and fear mixing in his mind. What kind of power are you talking about, Sarah? She gave him a faint, almost sad smile. A power that is both ancient and dangerous, but it is the only chance we have. Evan felt his heart race. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and the path ahead was more uncertain than ever. But as he looked into Sarah's glowing eyes, he knew one thing for sure. He had to trust her, no matter the cost. The hours leading up to the Zorilian attack felt like an eternity. The Pioneer was ready, the crew in position, but Even knew that they were all walking on a knife's edge. The Zorilians were powerful, and if they decided to attack, the consequences would be deadly. Yet, the greatest danger wasn't the Zorilians. It was the power that Sarah had revealed to him, a power that could change everything. Even stood at the bridge, staring out into space. The dark void seemed endless, the stars tiny pinpricks of light. The Zorilian fleet was out there, lurking, waiting for the moment to strike. But Sarah's words echoed in his mind. If you help me unlock the true power hidden within me, I can stop them. Together, we can reshape their future. He glanced down at his hands, feeling the weight of the decision he had to make. Could he really trust Zara? Could he risk everything, his crew, humanity's future, on the possibility that this power she spoke of could be the key to survival? Mara's voice broke through his thoughts. "Captain, we've got a Zorelian warship approaching. They're making their move." Even nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The moment had arrived. Prepare for battle. Let's show them that we're not backing down. On the bridge, the crew moved quickly to their stations. Zane barked orders, his face tight with focus. The tension was palpable, but Even felt a strange calm wash over him. He had made his decision, and now there was no turning back. He turned to Mara, his eyes steady. "Mara, get Zara to the main command center. We need her now." Mara didn't hesitate. "Understood. I'll be right back." As Mara left, Avon glanced at the starboard view screen, where the Zorelian ship was slowly drawing closer. It was enormous, a towering mass of metal and energy, a reminder of the power that the Zorelians wielded. Even knew they would never back down unless forced to. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Mara returned, Zara at her side. The alien's silver hair shimmered in the dim light, her glowing blue eyes locked onto Even, with a mixture of determination and fear. "We're ready," Zara said, her voice low but strong. "The power is within me, Captain, but you must guide me. If we're to stop the Zorelians, I will need your trust." Even looked into her eyes, seeing both the hope and the weight of her words. This was it. There was no more time to second-guess. He had to act, and he had to act now. "Do it, Zara," he said. "I trust you." Zara nodded, stepping forward. She placed her hands on the central control panel, her fingers glowing as she began to concentrate. The air around her seemed to hum with energy. Even watched in awe as the room seemed to shift, a pulse of power flowing from Zara and into the ship's systems. "Hold on," she whispered, her voice steady despite the growing intensity of the energy. "This is going to be bumpy." The lights flickered, and a deep hum filled the air as the ship's systems responded to Zara's power. The crew gasped as the control panel sparked to life, the ship's weapons charging up. For a moment, the entire ship seemed to vibrate with raw energy. Then, Zara's eyes glowed brighter, and a pulse of blue light shot out from her, enveloping the ship. Even's heart raced as he realized what was happening. The Pioneer was being transformed, its systems now supercharged by Zara's power. They were ready to fight. "Captain," Mara's voice cut through the tension. "The Zorelians are firing. They're launching an attack." "Return fire," Even ordered without hesitation. "Full power to the weapons." The Pioneer responded instantly, its cannons firing in perfect sync. The Zorelian ship was hit hard, shields flickering as the energy blasts tore into its surface. But Even knew this was just the beginning. The Zorelians wouldn't give up so easily. "Prepare for a counterattack," Zane shouted, his voice strained as he worked to defend the ship. Zara's power surged again, and the ship's systems seemed to respond with new strength. The Pioneer moved faster, its agility enhanced by Zara's ability. Another blast hit the Zorelian ship, causing it to stagger back. "Keep pushing," Even urged, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We can win this." But just as it seemed they might have the upper hand, a massive shockwave rattled the ship. Even gripped the edge of the console, feeling the force of the impact. He knew that the Zorelians wouldn't stop, not until they had everything they wanted. "Now's our chance," Zara said, her voice urgent. "I can breach their core systems. If we don't act fast, this will be our last chance." Even nodded. "Do it, Zara. Do whatever it takes." With a final surge of power, Zara unleashed everything she had. A blast of energy shot out from the Pioneer, hitting the Zorelian ship's core. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, with a deafening explosion, the Zorelian ship erupted in a blinding flash of light. The battle was over. The Zorelians were defeated. The crew stood in stunned silence as the reality of what had just happened sank in. Even felt a mix of exhaustion and relief wash over him. They had done it, but at what cost? Sarah stood beside him, her eyes no longer glowing, her energy spent. "It's over," she said softly. Even nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of what had transpired. They had won, but they had also unlocked something far greater than they had ever expected. A new future for both species, but one that would need careful handling. There would be no going back. "We've survived," Even said quietly, his voice filled with both pride and uncertainty. "But now we need to rebuild." As the pioneers sailed through the stars, Even knew that this victory was just the beginning. They had survived the Zorrillian threat, but their true journey was just beginning.